The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the weathered wooden floors of the broken spoke, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Jake Harrison sat on the edge of the small stage, his calloused fingers absently plucking at his Gibson J45, the same guitar his father had played for 20 years before lung cancer took him 3 years ago. The honky-tonk was quiet now, hours before the evening crowd would trickle in, if they came at all these days. At 28, Jake had the kind of face that told stories before he ever opened his mouth. Sun-weathered skin from his days working construction, tired brown eyes that still sparked when he talked about music, and hands that were equally comfortable holding a hammer or a guitar pick. His father's cowboy hat sat on the stool beside him, sweat-stained and faded, a relic he couldn't bring himself to wear, but couldn't leave at home either. "You're here early," Dorothy Sullivan called from behind the bar, her voice carrying that distinctive Texas drawl that came from 72 years of living nowhere else. She was wiping down the same section of mahogany she'd been cleaning for 40 years, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, her weathered hands moving with the muscle memory of decades. "Show doesn't start for another 4 hours, honey." Jake looked up, offering a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Needed to get away from the sawdust for a bit. Been framing houses all day over in Cedar Park. My hands needed to remember what they're actually meant for." Dorothy walked over, her boots clicking against the scuffed floor. She'd bought the Broken Spoke in 1986, back when Austin was still weird instead of expensive. Back when country music meant Willie and Waylon, not pop songs with a fiddle. The walls were covered in photographs, black and white memories of legends who'd played this stage. There was Willie Nelson in 1989, Dwight Yoakam in 1993, and right there in the center, Robert Harrison in 2015, Jake's father mid-song, mouth open, eyes closed, lost in the music. "Your daddy used to do the same thing," Dorothy said softly, settling into a chair near the stage. "Come in early. Play to an empty room." He said that's when the music was most honest, when nobody was listening but himself and God. Jake's fingers found a chord progression, something melancholy in G minor. Outside, South Lamar Boulevard hummed with traffic, the Austin skyline visible through the windows, gleaming glass towers that hadn't existed when this place opened in 1964. The city was changing, growing faster than anyone could keep up with. And places like the Broken Spoke were becoming dinosaurs, relics of a Texas that was disappearing beneath condos and tech companies. "Dorothy, I've been meaning to ask," Jake started, but she held up a weathered hand. "Stop right there, Jake. I know what you're going to ask." And the answer hasn't changed. Her blue eyes, still sharp despite her age, met his. The property taxes went up again, 53% this year. Insurance doubled because apparently we're a liability now. The roof needs $15,000 in repairs. The air conditioning is held together with duct tape and prayers. And last month we barely cleared enough to pay the band. Jake set down his guitar carefully. "How bad is it?" Dorothy sighed, and in that exhale was 4 decades of memories. First dances, marriage proposals, celebrations and heartbreaks, all soundtracked by country music played the way it was meant to be played. Live and honest and real. "My accountant called yesterday. Said if I'm smart, I'll sell to that developer who's been sniffing around. They want to tear it down, build another one of those mixed-use developments. Condos on top, artisanal coffee shops on the bottom." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "You can't be serious." "I'm 72 years old, honey. I'm tired. And I'm broke." Dorothy's voice cracked slightly. "I've been holding on because this place means something, you know? It's history. Your daddy played here. George Strait played here before he was George Strait. And hundreds of musicians who never got famous, but loved the music just as much. But history doesn't pay the bills. Jake stood up, pacing the stage like a caged animal. Through the window, he could see the Austin skyline, all those new buildings full of people who'd moved here for tech jobs, who thought country music was whatever Nashville was manufacturing for radio play. How long do we have? 30 days. The developer needs an answer by March 4th. If I say no, the property taxes are due March 15th, and I don't have the money. Dorothy pulled a handkerchief from her pocket, dabbing at her eyes. I'm sorry, Jake. I know what this place means to you, especially after losing your father. But I don't see another way. The front door swung open, and Danny Wright walked in, his drum cases slung over his shoulder. Danny had been Jake's best friend since middle school, a stocky guy with a perpetual sunburn and an infectious grin. He'd played drums in every band Jake had ever been in, from their terrible high school garage band to their current Tuesday night residency at the Broken Spoke. Why does everyone look like somebody died? Danny asked, setting down his equipment. We've got a show tonight. We're supposed to be happy, or at least convincingly enthusiastic. Jake and Dorothy exchanged a glance. Danny's smile faded as he read the room. What happened? The Spoke's closing, Jake said flatly. 30 days. Danny's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, resignation. He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. Hell, I was afraid this was coming. My cousin's bar over in Round Rock closed last year. Same story. Property taxes, developers, can't compete with the new places. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, the weight of impending loss settling over them like dust. The Broken Spoke had been a constant in all their lives, a place where music mattered more than image, where you could be yourself, where the past and present coexisted in perfect harmony. Rachel Coleman arrived 20 minutes later, her violin case in hand and her long auburn hair still damp from her after-school shower. She taught music at Anderson High School, spent her evenings playing fiddle in Jake's band, and had been dating Jake for 2 years. 2 years of patient understanding as he worked through his grief over his father. 2 years of believing in his music even when he didn't believe in himself. Why does everyone look like we're at a funeral? She asked, echoing Danny's earlier sentiment. Jake told her. Rachel set down her violin case and walked straight to him, wrapping her arms around him without saying a word. She understood what this place meant. She'd met Jake here, had fallen in love with him while watching him play his father's songs, had seen how music was the thing that kept him connected to a man he'd lost too soon. There has to be something we can do, Rachel said finally, pulling back to look at Dorothy. A fundraiser? A GoFundMe? Something? Dorothy shook her head sadly. Honey, we'd need at least $100,000 to catch up on everything and make the repairs. That's not GoFundMe money. That's miracle money. The evening crowd started filtering in around 7. A smaller crowd than it used to be. Maybe 40 people instead of the 150 that used to pack the place on Tuesday nights. There were the regulars, old-timers who remembered when country music was about stories instead of stadiums. Younger folks who'd stumbled in looking for authenticity in a city that was losing it. And a few tourists who'd read about the Broken Spoke in some real Austin guide. Jake and his band, Danny on drums, Rachel on fiddle, Kevin Barnes on bass, and Lisa Chen on steel guitar, played their hearts out that night. They opened with Amarillo by Morning, one of George Strait's classics and one of Robert Harrison's favorites. Jake's voice, a rich baritone that carried the weight of West Texas dust and heartbreak, filled the room. As he sang, Jake's eyes drifted to the photograph of his father on the wall. Robert Harrison had been a giant in Jake's life. Not famous, not wealthy, but rich in the ways that mattered. He'd taught Jake 3 chords on the guitar when he was 7, taught him that honest work and honest music were the same thing. taught him that success wasn't measured in record sales, but in whether you could look at yourself in the mirror and like what you saw. Robert had worked construction for 30 years, played music every chance he got, and died with $847 in his bank account and a funeral attended by 300 people who loved him. Jake had inherited his guitar, his hat, his love of real country music, and his stubborn conviction that some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight seemed hopeless. Between sets, Jake stood outside in the cool February night, the Austin air crisp and clean. South Lamar was alive with activity. Cars streaming past, restaurants full of people spending money on $12 cocktails and artisanal tacos. The city was booming, they said. Austin was one of the fastest-growing cities in America, they said. But growth, Jake thought, wasn't the same as progress. Not if it meant losing the things that made a place worth living in. Rachel found him there, leaning against the wall beneath the old neon sign that had flickered "The Broken Spoke" for 62 years. "You're thinking about something stupid and noble," she said, knowing him too well. "I can see it on your face." Jake turned to her, this woman who'd somehow loved him through his worst moments, who'd held him when he cried over his father, who believed in his music, even when it didn't pay the bills. What if we tried to save it? Save what? The bar? Yeah. What if we organized something big? A festival, a benefit concert, something that could raise the money Dorothy needs. Rachel studied his face in the neon glow. "Jake, she said she needs $100,000. I know what it is. I know it's crazy. But what's the alternative? We let another piece of real Austin die? We let developers turn it into condos? This place matters, Rachel. My dad played here. George Strait played here. It's history. George Strait playing here was 40 years ago, baby. He's not coming back for a benefit concert." Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustration and determination warring in his chest. Maybe not. But there are other musicians, other people who care. Hell, I'll play for free. Danny will. You will. We'll call every musician in Austin who's ever played here, and we'll do something big enough to matter. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, and Jake could see her teacher's mind working through the logistics, the problems, the very real possibility of failure. But then she smiled, that same smile that had made him fall in love with her, equal parts exasperation and affection. "You're absolutely crazy," she said. "But, okay, if you're doing this, I'm in." They walked back inside together, where Danny was telling an elaborate story to Kevin and Lisa, something involving his ex-girlfriend and a broken-down truck. Jake waited for a lull, then cleared his throat. "Hey, everyone. I need to talk to you about something." The band gathered around, and Jake laid out his idea. A massive benefit concert, multiple acts, maybe a whole weekend festival, something big enough to raise the money the Broken Spoke needed to survive. As he talked, he could see skepticism on their faces, but also something else. Hope. "Man, that's ambitious," Kevin said. He was 53, a bass player who'd toured with major acts in the 90s before settling in Austin to raise his kids. "But you know what? I'm in. This place saved my life after my divorce. I'll play for free, and I know some people who might do the same." Lisa nodded, her fingers absently playing with one of her steel guitar slides. "My husband knows some people at Koki FM. Maybe we could get some radio promotion." Dorothy, who'd been listening from behind the bar, walked over with tears in her eyes. "You kids don't have to do this. It's not your burden." Jake met her gaze steadily. "Dorothy, my dad played his last show here 2 months before he got diagnosed. I was in the audience, and I remember thinking that he'd never looked happier. This place gave him something, gave all of us something. If there's even a chance we can save it, we have to try." Dorothy pulled Jake into a hug, her small frame shaking slightly. "Your daddy would be proud of you, honey. So damn proud." That night, after the show ended and the last customers filtered out into the Austin darkness, Jake sat alone on the stage one more time. He pulled out his phone and started making a list of everyone he could call. Every musician he knew, every favor he could ask. The odds were long, he knew that. 30 days to organize a festival big enough to raise $100,000? It was borderline impossible. But as he looked at his father's photograph on the wall, at that frozen moment of pure musical joy, Jake made himself a promise. He would fight for this place with everything he had. And maybe, just maybe, miracles still happened in Austin, Texas. The guitar case clicked shut, the lights went down, and Jake Harrison walked out into the February night with a crazy plan and a heart full of determination. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Jake's small apartment in East Austin, illuminating the organized chaos of his life. Guitar cases stacked against one wall, construction blueprints spread across a battered coffee table, and now, covering every available surface, notes and lists for the benefit festival. He'd barely slept, his mind racing with possibilities and logistics. Rachel arrived at 8 with breakfast tacos from Veracruz and the determined expression she usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences. She found Jake surrounded by papers, his laptop open to a spreadsheet that was more hope than reality. "Please tell me you slept at least a little," she said, handing him a coffee. "Define sleep," Jake replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "I've been making lists. We need a venue. The Broken Spoke is too small for something this big. We need acts, sponsors, promotion, permits, sound equipment, security." Jake breathed. Rachel sat down next to him, moving a stack of papers. "You can't organize an entire festival in one night. We need a team." She was right, of course. By noon, they'd assembled a core group in Dorothy's bar. Danny, Kevin, Lisa, and 2 more people who'd prove invaluable. The first was Bobby Patterson, a 60-year-old promoter who'd organized Austin City Limits performances in the 80s and now ran a much smaller operation booking local acts. Bobby had a salt-and-pepper beard, a gift for logistics, and a deep love for the Broken Spoke. "I remember when your daddy played here with Randy Travis back in 2012, Bobby told Jake, his gravelly voice warm with memory. "Small show, maybe 60 people, but it was magic. Real country music, the kind you don't hear much anymore." The second edition was Christina Wade, a 26-year-old marketing consultant who'd grown up going to the Broken Spoke with her grandfather. Christina was sharp, ambitious, and knew how to leverage social media in ways that baffled the older members of the group. "We need to make this viral," Christina said, her fingers flying across her phone screen. Hashtag Save the Broken Spoke. We'll need video content, Instagram stories, TikTok." "TikTok?" Danny interrupted. "We're trying to save a country music institution, not teach teenagers dance moves." Christina fixed him with a patient look. "TikTok has millions of country music fans. If we can get the right people talking about this, we can sell tickets nationwide. People will fly in for this." Bobby spread a map of Austin across the bar. "First question, where do we hold this thing?" "The Spoke holds 200 people max. If we're trying to raise serious money, we need at least 2,000 capacity." "What about Zilker Park?" Lisa suggested. "It's public. It's big. Permit would take months." "And we don't have months," Bobby interrupted gently. "We need something we can book fast, somewhere sympathetic to the cause." Jake stared at the map, his finger tracing familiar streets. Then it hit him. The Travis County Exposition Center. It's got indoor and outdoor space, capacity for 5,000, and it's owned by the county. My buddy from high school, Nathan Briggs, works in the events office there. Bobby's eyes lit up. That could work. It's not fancy, but it's got good bones. We'd need to dress it up, make it feel like a real country music festival. But yeah, that could work. I'll call Nathan today, Jake said, scribbling notes. Rachel had her teacher's planner out, creating a timeline that made the impossible look merely improbable. Okay, if we're doing this on March 1st, that gives us 27 days. Week 1, we secure the venue and lock in the headlining acts. Week 2, we handle promotion and ticket sales. Week 3, we finalize logistics, sound, lighting, food vendors, security. Week 4, we pray. What about the lineup? Kevin asked. Who's actually going to play? This was the crucial question, the one that would make or break everything. Jake had been thinking about it all night. We need a mix. Local acts who love this place and will play for free or cheap. Some bigger regional names who can draw crowds. And if we're really lucky, one major headliner who can sell the whole thing. Bobby pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. I can reach out to some folks. Willie Nelson's people, maybe. He's played the Spoke before, and he's always been good about supporting local venues. Willie's 86 years old, Danny pointed out. I love the man. But is he still touring? Less than he used to, but he still plays benefits, Bobby countered. I'll make some calls. What about some of the younger acts breaking through? Parker McCollum, Cody Johnson. Those guys are huge right now, and they're Texas boys. Christina was already typing. I'll reach out to their management on social media, explain what we're doing. Sometimes younger acts are more responsive to grassroots campaigns. The energy in the room was building, possibility replacing skepticism. Dorothy brought out sweet tea and listened as they talked, her eyes shining with cautious hope. What about George Strait? Lisa asked suddenly, and the room went quiet. Jake felt his heart skip. George Strait, the king of country, 73 years old and semi-retired, living somewhere outside San Antonio. He'd played the Broken Spoke in 1984, a small show right before he exploded into superstardom. Robert Harrison had been there, had told Jake the story 100 times about watching a young George Strait command a tiny stage like it was Madison Square Garden. George doesn't do small shows anymore, Bobby said gently. He plays Vegas a few times a year, and that's about it. Getting to him would be nearly impossible. And even if we did, there's no way. My dad knew him, Jake said quietly. Not well, but they talked that night in '84. George signed a poster for him, wrote something about keeping real country alive. I've still got it at home. Rachel squeezed his hand. Jake, that was 42 years ago. George Strait probably doesn't remember that night. I know. You're right. It's stupid. Jake shook his head, trying to dislodge the fantasy. Let's focus on acts we can actually get. But the seed was planted, a small irrational hope that Jake couldn't quite extinguish. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of phone calls, emails, and increasingly desperate networking. Nathan Briggs came through on the venue. The Travis County Exposition Center was available on March 1st, and when Jake explained the situation, Nathan offered it at cost, barely more than the insurance and staffing required. It was their first real victory. The lineup was harder. Bobby managed to confirm 3 solid regional acts. The Henderson Brothers, a bluegrass country fusion band from Houston. Natalie Reeves, a rising singer-songwriter from Dallas. And Tommy Cruz, an old-school honky-tonk artist who'd been playing Texas dance halls for 30 years. Kevin called in favors and got commitments from 5 local Austin bands, all willing to play 30-minute sets for free. But they still lacked a true headliner, someone with enough draw to sell thousands of tickets at the prices they'd need to charge. Jake spent his days swinging hammers on construction sites, his mind elsewhere. His boss, a gruff man named Harold Jenkins, noticed his distraction and pulled him aside on the third day. "Harrison, you've been half useless all week." "What's going on?" Jake explained, expecting irritation. Instead, Harold's weathered face softened. "The Broken Spoke? Hell, I proposed to my wife there in 1997. They still have that dance floor?" "Same one." Harold pulled out his wallet and extracted $500 bills. "That's for the cause. And take Friday off. You clearly need to focus on this thing." It was moments like that, unexpected generosity from unexpected sources, that kept Jake going when the obstacles seemed insurmountable. Christina's social media campaign was gaining traction. She'd created a video featuring footage of the Broken Spoke through the decades, interviews with musicians who'd played there, and a heartfelt appeal from Dorothy. The hashtag Yajus Save the Broken Spoke was trending in Austin, and the story was picked up by the Austin Chronicle and KPT Radio. Ticket sales started slowly. They'd set prices at $50 for general admission, $100 for VIP, trying to balance accessibility with the desperate need to raise money. The first day, they sold 43 tickets. The second day, 112. By the end of the first week, they were at just under 800. Respectable, but nowhere near the numbers they needed. "We're not going to make it," Jake said one night, staring at the spreadsheet. Even if they sold out the entire venue at 5,000 people, at $50 average per ticket, that was only $250,000. After expenses, venue, sound, insurance, promotion, they'd be lucky to clear $60,000. "We need sponsorships," Christina said. "Local businesses, big corporations, anyone who wants to associate themselves with saving a piece of Austin history." Rachel had a different idea. "What about a silent auction? People could donate items, experiences, stuff people actually want. We could raise extra money that way." The ideas kept coming, each one a small life raft in a very big ocean. Danny's uncle owned a barbecue restaurant and offered to cater the VIP area at cost. Lisa's husband worked for a sound company and got them a massive discount on the audio system. Bobby knew a lighting designer who owed him a favor. But it still wasn't enough. By the end of the second week, with 13 days until the festival, they'd sold 2,000 tickets and secured $20,000 in sponsorships. The math was brutal. They were on track to raise maybe $70,000, $30,000 short of Dorothy's needs. Jake was working on a framing project in Westlake Hills when his phone rang. The number was unlisted, and he almost didn't answer. "Is this Jake Harrison?" The voice was professional. Female, unfamiliar. Speaking. "Mr. Harrison, my name is Jennifer Caldwell. I'm an assistant to George Strait. I understand you're organizing a benefit for the Broken Spoke." Jake nearly dropped his hammer. Yes, we are. How did you—" Christina Wade sent a very persistent series of messages to multiple people in Mr. Strait's circle. Most of them were ignored, but one got through to me, and I mentioned it to George. He wanted me to call and learn more about what you're doing. Jake's hands were shaking. He walked away from the construction site, trying to compose himself. The Broken Spoke is closing. Property taxes, repairs, the usual story. We're trying to raise money to save it. It's an important place. Real country music, you know? The kind that doesn't exist much anymore. George is aware of the Broken Spoke. He played there in 1984. I know. My father was there that night, Robert Harrison. He talked about it for the rest of his life. There was a pause. "Hold on one moment, please." Jake waited, his heart pounding so hard he thought his ribs might crack. In the background, he could hear his co-workers calling his name, but he ignored them. Jennifer came back on the line. "Mr. Harrison, George asked me to tell you that he remembers the Broken Spoke fondly, and he wishes you the best with your benefit. However, he's semi-retired now and doesn't perform at events like this anymore. He wanted me to pass along his regrets and to send a personal donation of $5,000 to your cause." It was generous, impossibly generous, and Jake should have been grateful. But all he felt was crushing disappointment. "Please thank him for me. That's really kind." "I'll let him know. Good luck with your event, Mr. Harrison." The call ended. Jake stood in the Texas sun, feeling the weight of impossible odds pressing down on him. $5,000 was amazing, but it wasn't a miracle. It wasn't George Strait walking onto their stage and bringing the crowd that would save the Broken Spoke. That night, the core team gathered at the bar, and Jake told them about the call. $5,000 is nothing to sneeze at," Bobby said, ever practical. "And a public statement from George supporting the cause? Christina, can you leverage that?" "Absolutely," Christina said, already typing. "This is huge for credibility. If George Strait believes in what we're doing—" "But he's not coming," Jake interrupted, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "We're still short. We're still going to fail." Rachel grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Jake Harrison, listen to me. We have 13 days. We have 2,000 people who've already bought tickets because they believe in this place. We have sponsors and volunteers and musicians donating their time. We haven't failed yet, and we're not going to fail. But you need to believe that. We all need to believe that." Her fierce certainty cut through his despair. Jake nodded, pulling her into a hug. "Okay," he said. "Okay. We keep fighting." And they did. The third week arrived like a freight train, and with it came the crushing reality of everything that could go wrong. Jake had taken the entire week off from construction, burning through his vacation days, and probably some goodwill with Harold. He needed to. The festival was consuming every waking moment, and sleep was becoming optional. The weather forecast was the first crisis. A cold front was moving through central Texas, bringing a 30% chance of thunderstorms on March 1st. Bobby was philosophical about it. "You book an outdoor festival in Texas, you're gambling with the weather," he said, studying the forecast on his phone. 30% isn't terrible, and we've got the indoor expo hall as backup. The indoor space holds maybe 1,500 people comfortably, Jake pointed out. If we have to move everything inside, we'll have to turn away ticket holders. And if we turn away ticket holders, we're looking at refunds we can't afford. Christina was handling it with the same aggressive optimism she brought to everything. "We sell it as authentic Texas country. Real fans don't let a little rain stop them. We get ponchos made with the festival logo. Sell them for $20 each. Turn the problem into profit." The second crisis was more serious. 3 days before the festival, Natalie Reeves, one of their confirmed acts and a rising star in the Texas country scene, called with bad news. Her mother had suffered a stroke in Dallas, and Natalie needed to be with her family. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wanted to be there. I really did. But my mom—" "Don't apologize," Jake said immediately, his own memories of his father's illness fresh enough to ache. "Family comes first, always. We'll figure it out. You take care of your mom." But losing Natalie left a significant hole in the lineup. She'd been slotted for the prime 7 o'clock spot, right before the evening's headliners. Bobby worked his contacts frantically, trying to find a replacement on 48 hours' notice. "Everyone good is already booked," he said, frustration evident in his usually calm voice. "It's Friday night in Texas. Every decent country act is playing somewhere." Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "I'll do it. I'll play the 7 o'clock slot." The table went quiet. Danny spoke first. "Man, no offense, but you're a Tuesday night bar band guy. This is different. This is thousands of people expecting a show." "I know what it is," Jake said, his jaw set. "But I also know my dad's songs, and I know what this place means. If we're trying to save the Broken Spoke, maybe it should be someone who actually plays there regularly, not just touring acts passing through. Make it personal. Make it real." Rachel was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You haven't played for a crowd that size since that festival in San Marcos 5 years ago. You froze up, remember? Said you'd never do it again." He remembered. He'd been 23, full of confidence that evaporated the moment he looked out at 2,000 faces. He'd gotten through it, barely, but had sworn off big stages after that. The Broken Spoke's intimate crowd felt safe. This was different. "I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago," Jake said, trying to convince himself as much as the others. "And this matters too much to let fear win." Dorothy, who'd been quietly listening, reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Your daddy never played for crowds bigger than a few hundred people, but he had more stage presence than most stadium acts. It's in your blood, honey. You can do this." The decision was made. Jake's band would take the 7 o'clock slot. Danny started revising their set list immediately, pushing for bigger, more crowd-friendly songs. Rachel suggested adding some covers, classics that everyone would know and sing along to. "We open with All My Exes Live in Texas," Danny said, scribbling notes. "Get them energized right away. Then maybe some Hank Williams, some Waylon Jennings. We need to close with something big, something emotional." Jake knew exactly what song that would be, but he wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. The sponsorship situation improved slightly when Christina landed a major coup. Shiner Beer, the legendary Texas brewery, agreed to be a presenting sponsor for $15,000. Their logo would be everywhere, and they'd provide all the beer for the event at cost. "This is huge," Christina said, practically vibrating with excitement. "Shiner has massive brand loyalty in Texas. Their involvement gives us serious credibility." They were also getting donated items for the silent auction that exceeded expectations. A week at a lake house in the Hill Country, autographed guitars from several Texas music legends, dinner with the mayor of Austin, VIP passes to Austin City Limits tapings. Rachel was organizing it all with the efficiency of someone who managed classroom chaos for a living. "If the auction goes well, we could raise an additional $20,000, she calculated. "We're getting closer to the goal." Closer wasn't there, though. By Thursday, February 26th, with the festival 3 days away, their projections showed they'd raise approximately $85,000. 15,000 short. Jake was working himself to exhaustion, barely eating, running on coffee and desperation. He was at the exposition center late Thursday night, helping set up the stage, when he felt his phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. "Jake, this is Jennifer Caldwell, George Strait's assistant. Is there a time I could call you tomorrow? George would like to speak with you personally." Jake read the message 3 times, his heart hammering. He texted back immediately, "I'm available anytime, thank you." He told no one, afraid to hope, afraid that hoping would make the disappointment worse if it turned out to be nothing. Friday arrived cold and gray, the threatened front moving in earlier than expected. Jake's phone rang at 10 in the morning. The caller ID showed a Texas number he didn't recognize. "Hello? Jake Harrison?" The voice was unmistakable, even over a phone line. Warm, measured, with that distinctive East Texas quality that had defined country music for 4 decades. "Mr. Strait," Jake managed, his voice barely working. "This is... Thank you for calling, sir." a warm chuckle. "George is fine. I wanted to talk to you about this benefit you're organizing. Jennifer sent me all the information, and I've been following the coverage online. Christina Wade is very persistent." "She is, sir." "George, sorry. I'm a little starstruck here. Don't be. I'm just a guy who loves country music and remembers when the Broken Spoke was the kind of place where you could play real country and people actually listened. I played there in '84, right before Amarillo by Morning hit. About 60 people in the crowd, and they treated me like I was somebody special." "My father was there that night," Jake said. "Robert Harrison. He said you were the best thing he'd ever seen." There was a pause. Robert Harrison. Tall guy, dark hair, had a resistal hat. Jake's breath caught. "Yes, that's him. I remember him. He came up after the show, told me I reminded him of Merle Haggard, which was about the highest compliment anyone had given me at that point. We talked for 20 minutes about music, about keeping it real. He had a guitar with him, a Gibson, if I remember right. He gave that guitar to me," Jake said, tears pricking his eyes. "I'm playing it tomorrow night at the benefit." Another pause, longer this time. When George spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. "Jake, I'm going to be straight with you. I'm 73 years old. I don't tour anymore. I don't do benefits or festivals or promotional appearances. I play Vegas because it's controlled and easy, and I spend the rest of my time with my family. When Jennifer told me about your event, I sent the donation because it seemed like a good cause. But then I started reading about it, and about you, and about your father." Jake's heart was in his throat, hope and dread warring in his chest. "I'm not making any promises," George continued, "but I'm going to be in Austin tomorrow anyway. Personal business, seeing some old friends, and I thought I might swing by your festival, take a look around. Maybe if the moment feels right, I might get up and play a song or two. But I'm not announcing it. I'm not committing to it. And you absolutely cannot tell anyone I might be there. If word gets out and I don't show, or I show and don't play, I don't want people disappointed. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Jake said, his mind reeling. "George, thank you. Even if you just stop by, that would be incredible. I'll see you tomorrow, Jake. And good luck with the benefit. What you're doing matters." The call ended. Jake stood in the cold February air outside the exposition center, staring at his phone like it might explain what had just happened. George Strait, the king of country, might show up tomorrow. Might play. And Jake couldn't tell anyone. The weight of the secret was enormous. All day Friday, as they finalized preparations, Jake kept catching Rachel and Danny looking at him curiously. "You're acting weird," Rachel said finally, as they tested the sound system. "Weirder than usual. What's going on?" "Just nervous," Jake lied, hating himself for it. "Big day tomorrow." That night, the core team gathered at the Broken Spoke one last time before the festival. Dorothy had made her famous chili, and they sat around eating and trying not to think about everything that could go wrong tomorrow. "Whatever happens," Dorothy said, raising a beer, "I want you all to know what this has meant to me. You fought for this place when it would have been easier to let it go. You gave it a chance. That matters, regardless of outcome." They toasted, the clink of bottles echoing in the old honky-tonk. Jake looked around at these people. His band, his girlfriend, his friends. This woman who'd been like a grandmother to him. They'd worked themselves to exhaustion for a place that meant something, or an idea that felt increasingly fragile in a world that valued new over authentic. Tomorrow would tell them if it had been enough. Saturday, March 1st, dawned gray and cold, the temperature hovering at 48 degrees with clouds like bruises across the Texas sky. Jake had barely slept, his mind a carousel of worst-case scenarios and impossible hopes. He was up at 5, running through his set list for what felt like the 1,000th time, his fingers finding the familiar shapes of chords on his father's Gibson. Rachel had stayed over, and she woke to find him sitting on the couch in the pre-dawn darkness, guitar in his lap, eyes distant. "You're going to be amazing today," she said softly, sitting beside him. "What if I'm not? What if I freeze up again? What if—" She kissed him, cutting off the spiral of anxiety. "Jake Harrison, you've spent 3 weeks organizing a festival from scratch. You've rallied an entire community, gotten commitments from major sponsors, sold thousands of tickets. You've already done the impossible. Playing guitar is the easy part." He wanted to believe her. More than that, he wanted to tell her about George's call, about the possibility that might materialize today. But he'd made a promise, and he kept it. By 8 o'clock, the exposition center was controlled chaos. Bobby was directing the stage crew, his clipboard and headset making him look like a veteran general commanding troops. Christina was everywhere at once, filming content for social media, coordinating with vendors, solving problems before they became crises. Danny was setting up his drum kit with the focused intensity of a surgeon. The silent auction items were displayed in the indoor expo hall, and Rachel was setting up the bidding sheets, making sure everything was perfect. Kevin and Lisa were running final sound checks, their voices echoing across the empty venue. "Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Jake, you hearing me clearly?" Jake gave a thumbs up from the side of the stage. The sound was good, clean and powerful, the kind of audio system usually reserved for major tours. He felt a flutter of nervousness. This wasn't the Broken Spoke's intimate stage. This was professional, big, real. The gates opened at 11, and people started trickling in. The early crowd was different from what Jake had expected. Not just older country music fans, but families, young couples, college students. Christina's social media campaign had worked better than anyone had dared hope, turning the event into something Austin actually cared about. By noon, there were maybe 500 people scattered across the grounds, eating barbecue, drinking Shiner, browsing the auction items. The local bands started playing at 1, filling the cold February air with music. Jake wandered through the crowd, anonymous in his jacket and baseball cap, listening to fragments of conversation. "My parents used to take me to the Broken Spoke when I was a kid. I can't believe they might actually save it. Did you see George Strait donated? Maybe he'll show up." That last comment made Jake's heart skip. He scanned the crowd constantly, looking for any sign of George, but saw nothing. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe the personal business had run long. Maybe Jake had misunderstood the whole conversation. At 3 o'clock, the clouds opened up, and rain began to fall. Not the thunderstorm that had been threatened, but a steady, cold drizzle that sent people scrambling for the covered areas. Bobby made the call to move some of the smaller acts inside to the expo hall, but the main stage would continue outside under the massive tent they erected. "Real country fans don't melt in the rain," Bobby said with a grin, and he was right. The crowd actually seemed energized by the weather, embracing the authentic Texas experience of it all. Ticket sales at the door were better than expected. By 5 o'clock, they'd passed 3,000 people, with more arriving as the afternoon acts drew crowds. The Henderson brothers played at 4:30, their bluegrass country fusion getting people dancing despite the rain. Tommy Cruise followed at 6, his honky-tonk classics bringing out the two-steppers. And then it was Jake's turn. 7 o'clock. The crowd had swelled to nearly 4,000, people packed under the tent and spilling out into the rain, not caring about the weather anymore. Jake stood backstage, his father's guitar in his hands, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Danny appeared at his elbow. You ready, brother? No, absolutely not. Let's do this anyway. Rachel kissed him once, hard. You're Robert Harrison's son. You've got this. The stage manager gave him the signal. Jake walked out onto the stage, and the crowd erupted. The lights were blinding. The sea of faces was terrifying. For one horrible moment, Jake felt 23 again, paralyzed by fear. But then his fingers found the opening chords of All My Exes Live in Texas, and muscle memory took over. Danny counted them in, and they launched into the song. Jake's voice found its strength by the second verse, filling the space, reaching the back of the crowd. He could see people singing along, could feel the energy building. By the time they hit the chorus, 4,000 people were singing with him, and the fear evaporated, replaced by pure exhilaration. They played for 45 minutes. Waylon, Willie, Merle, George Jones, all the classics that defined real country music. The crowd responded to every song, dancing and singing and celebrating not just the music, but the idea behind it. The fight to preserve something authentic. For the last song, Jake brought out the Gibson his father had played, the one George Strait had seen in 1984. He stepped up to the mic, and the crowd quieted. "This last song is special," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My father, Robert Harrison, played this stage at the Broken Spoke hundreds of times. He wasn't famous, never made a record, never played stadiums, but he loved country music the way you're supposed to love it, honestly and with everything he had. He passed away 3 years ago, but before he died, he made me promise to keep playing, to keep the music real. This song was his favorite. And Dad, if you're watching from somewhere, this one's for you. This one's for the Broken Spoke. And this one's for everyone here who believes that some things are worth fighting for." He started playing Amarillo by Morning, George Strait's classic, the song his father had loved most in the world. Jake had sung it 1,000 times, but never like this. Never with this much weight and meaning. As he sang, he scanned the crowd one more time, and his breath caught. Standing at the very back, nearly invisible in the shadows and the rain, was a figure in a black cowboy hat. Tall, dignified, watching the stage with quiet intensity. George Strait. Jake nearly missed the next verse, his mind reeling. George was here. He'd come. And he was listening to Jake sing his song. Jake finished Amarillo by Morning, with tears streaming down his face, pouring every ounce of emotion into the final chorus. The crowd was silent, rapt, and when the last note faded, the applause was thunderous, a wave of sound that washed over the stage. Jake waved, thanked the crowd, and walked off stage, his legs shaking. Bobby grabbed him immediately. "Jake, that was incredible. That was... Wait, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "He's here," Jake whispered. "George is here." Back of the crowd, black hat. Bobby's eyes went wide. He pulled out his phone, texted someone, and within seconds, Jennifer Caldwell appeared backstage, professional and unflappable. "Mr. Harrison, George would like to speak with you privately. Can you come with me?" Jake followed her to a cordoned-off area behind the stage, and there he was, George Strait, in person, even more commanding than Jake had imagined. "Hell of a performance, Jake," George said, extending his hand. "You did that song justice." Jake shook his hand, barely able to speak. "Thank you, sir. I can't believe you're here. I told you I might stop by." George's eyes twinkled with humor. "I've been watching for the last hour. This is a good thing you've put together. Real country music, real people, a real cause. Reminds me of why I got into this business in the first place." He paused, seeming to make a decision. I told you I wasn't making any promises. But standing out there, listening to you play your father's guitar, singing that song, I think I'd like to play a few songs, if you'll have me." Jake's mind went blank. You want to play? Here? Now? If it's all the same to you. I didn't bring a band, so I'll need to borrow yours. Think they can keep up with an old man? Yes, absolutely. Yes. George smiled. Don't announce me. I'll just walk out there, see what happens. Sometimes the best moments are the ones nobody sees coming. Bobby nearly had a heart attack when Jake told him. Christina started hyperventilating. Danny dropped his drumsticks and had to retrieve them with shaking hands. Rachel just stood there, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. George Strait is going to play, Jake kept repeating, as if saying it would make it real. He's going to play. Right now. The current act, a local Austin band called the Rail Splitters, was midway through their set, the crowd energized and growing larger by the minute. Word was spreading on social media that something special was happening, and people were arriving from all over Austin, cramming into the venue until the fire marshal started looking nervous. George was backstage, casually tuning a borrowed guitar, talking with Danny about the set list like this was any other show. "Let's keep it simple," George said. "Maybe 4-5 songs, some classics people know. Amarillo by Morning, All My Exes Live in Texas, maybe The Chair and Check Yes or No. Keep them happy, keep it fun. This isn't about me. It's about what you're all trying to save." Jake's band was running through a quick rehearsal on the side stage, their hands trembling with nerves and excitement. Kevin kept whispering, "I'm about to play bass for George Strait. I'm about to play bass for George Strait." Lisa looked like she might faint. At 8:30, the Rail Splitters finished their set to massive applause. Bobby walked out onto the stage, his voice booming through the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got something special for you tonight. Someone heard about what we're trying to do here, about saving the broken spoke, about keeping real country music alive in Austin. And this someone decided to stop by and play a few songs. Please welcome a true Texas legend, Mr. George Strait." For a moment, there was stunned silence. People looked at each other, confused, certain they'd misheard. And then George walked out onto the stage, guitar in hand, that iconic black cowboy hat, unmistakable even in the dim light. The crowd exploded. 4,000 people screaming, crying, jumping, unable to believe what they were seeing. Phone cameras went up instantly, a sea of lights capturing the moment. George just smiled, waved, and waited for the noise to die down. "Good evening, Austin," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "I heard y'all were trying to save the broken spoke, and I couldn't let that happen without stopping by. I played that place back in 1984, and it was one of the best nights of my early career. So, let's play some music and raise some money. Sound good?" The roar of approval was deafening. George counted off "Amarillo by Morning," and when he started singing, it was like time stopped. That voice, rich, smooth, effortless, filled the cold February night. Danny, Kevin, Lisa, and Rachel played with precision and passion, matching George's energy perfectly. Jake stood at the side of the stage, watching, tears streaming down his face. His father had told him about this voice, about watching George Strait command a stage. But hearing about it and experiencing it were two entirely different things. George didn't just sing, he connected. Every word carrying weight and authenticity, every note perfectly placed. They moved into "All My Exes Live in Texas," and the crowd sang every single word. George was smiling now, feeding off the energy, clearly enjoying himself. He told stories between songs about playing honky-tonks across Texas in the early '80s, about the struggle to keep country music country, about the importance of places like the Broken Spoke. These old venues, these honky-tonks and dance halls, they're where country music lives, George said, his voice serious. Not in boardrooms or recording studios, but in places where real people come to dance and drink and forget their troubles for a few hours. When we lose these places, we lose something important. So what you're doing here tonight matters. It really does. He played The Chair, and couples swayed together despite the rain. He played Check Yes or No, and the crowd sang so loudly they almost drowned him out. And then, for his final song, George did something unexpected. "Jake Harrison," he called out. "Where are you, son?" Jake froze, his heart stopping. George was looking directly at him, gesturing him onto the stage. "Get out here. Bring your daddy's guitar." Rachel pushed him forward, and somehow Jake's legs carried him onto the stage. The crowd was screaming again, but it all felt distant, unreal. He was standing next to George Strait. This was actually happening. George put an arm around Jake's shoulders, speaking into the mic. "This young man's father, Robert Harrison, was at my show at the Broken Spoke in 1984. He came up after and told me I reminded him of Merle Haggard, which might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Robert spent his whole life playing country music for the love of it, not for fame or money, just because the music mattered. Jake here inherited that guitar and that love. So, Jake, let's play one together. What do you say?" Jake nodded, unable to speak. George counted them off into Troubadour, one of his later hits, a song about the life of a traveling musician. They played it together, Jake's voice harmonizing with George's, his fingers finding the chords with muscle memory and pure instinct. In that moment, playing alongside his hero, Jake felt his father's presence like a physical thing. Robert Harrison would have given anything to experience this, and in a way, he was. Through his son, through his guitar, through the music that connected generations. The song ended, and George pulled Jake into a hug. "Your daddy would be proud, son. Real proud." George waved to the crowd one final time and walked off stage, leaving Jake standing alone in the spotlight, tears streaming down his face. 4,000 people cheering. Backstage, chaos reigned. News had spread far beyond the festival. Social media was exploding. Local news stations were trying to get in, and Christina was fielding calls from national media outlets. Video of George's performance was going viral, shared hundreds of thousands of times in minutes. "The ticket website crashed," Christina said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Too much traffic. People are trying to donate money, buy merchandise, support the cause." "Jake, this is bigger than we ever imagined." Dorothy arrived backstage, escorted by Bobby. She looked tiny and overwhelmed, tears streaming down her weathered face. George saw her and walked over immediately. "You must be Dorothy Sullivan," he said warmly. "I remember you from '84. You gave me a free beer and told me I'd be famous someday." Dorothy laughed through her tears. "And I was right, wasn't I? George, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe any of this. Places like yours saved my career," George said simply. "It's the least I could do." The festival continued for another hour, but nothing could top what had just happened. People stayed, dancing and celebrating, the rain forgotten, the cold irrelevant. They'd witnessed something special, something they'd tell their grandchildren about. The night George Strait played a benefit concert to save the Broken Spoke. By midnight, when the last notes faded and the crowd finally dispersed, Bobby and Christina had done the math. Ticket sales at the door after George's appearance, donations flooding in online, the silent auction exceeding all expectations, corporate sponsors calling with additional contributions, the total was staggering. $237,000, Bobby announced to the exhausted core team gathered backstage. After expenses, we'll clear approximately $165,000 for the broken spoke. The number hung in the air. They'd needed $100,000. They'd raised $65,000 more than that. Dorothy collapsed into a chair, sobbing. It's saved. The spoke is saved. Rachel wrapped Jake in her arms, both of them crying and laughing simultaneously. Danny was jumping around like a madman. Kevin and Lisa were hugging. Christina was already planning the press releases. George had left quietly, the way he'd arrived, but he'd left something behind. A signed poster for the Broken Spokes wall, with a note that read, "To Dorothy and everyone who loves real country music, keep it alive. George Strait, March 1st, 2026. The weeks that followed were a blur. The story of the benefit concert was picked up by national news outlets, country music magazines, and even some international press. The Broken Spoke became famous overnight. People traveling from across the country to visit the honky-tonk that George Strait had helped save. Dorothy used the money wisely. Property taxes paid, roof repaired, air conditioning replaced, and enough left over for a small emergency fund. But more than the money, the benefit had given the Broken Spoke something priceless: relevance. Suddenly, it wasn't just a relic, but a destination. A living piece of country music history. Jake went back to his construction job, but everything felt different now. He'd stood on stage with George Strait. He'd helped save a piece of Austin's soul. And he'd discovered something about himself in the process. That fear was just something you had to push through. That impossible things became possible when people came together for something that mattered. 3 months later, on a warm May evening, the Broken Spoke was packed for Jake's Tuesday night residency. The crowd was different now, bigger, more diverse, a mix of old regulars and curious newcomers who'd heard the story. But the music was the same. Honest, real, country, the way it was meant to be played. Between sets, Jake stood outside in the Texas night, looking at the old neon sign that now had a permanent place in Austin's skyline. Rachel joined him, sliding her hand into his. "You thinking about that night?" she asked. "Every day," Jake admitted. "Still feels like a dream." "It wasn't a dream. It was you refusing to give up on something important. You did that, Jake. You and everyone who believed in this place." Inside, Dorothy rang the bell that signaled the start of the next set. Jake picked up his father's Gibson, the guitar that had been on stage with George Strait, the guitar that carried the music forward from one generation to the next. As he walked back inside, he glanced up at the wall of photographs. They'd added a new one, Jake and George Strait, mid-song, his father's guitar visible between them. It hung right next to the 1984 photo of young George and Robert Harrison, the two images connected across 42 years. The music started, and Jake began to sing. The crowd sang along, dancing and drinking and living in the moment. Somewhere, Jake thought, his father was smiling. The Broken Spoke was saved. Real country music had won. And in Austin, Texas, on a warm May night, the honky-tonks were still alive, still thriving, still reminding everyone that some things, the important things, were worth fighting for. Jake Harrison's voice filled the room, carrying stories of heartbreak and hope, of struggle and triumph, of a Texas that refused to disappear. And in that moment, surrounded by people who loved the music as much as he did, Jake understood what his father had known all along. It was never about fame or fortune. It was about the music, the community, the connection between a singer and a song and the people who needed to hear it. It was about places like the Broken Spoke, where legends were born and memories were made, and the past and present danced together under neon lights. It was about love, for music, for tradition, for each other. And it was about knowing that sometimes, when you fight for something that matters, when you refuse to let the important things die, miracles can happen. Even in the form of a 73-year-old country legend in a black cowboy hat, walking onto a stage in the rain to save a honky-tonk in Austin, Texas. The song ended. The crowd cheered, and Jake Harrison smiled, his father's guitar in his hands, knowing that the music would go on.